So maybe you've heard the statistic that 2 out of every 5 pastors in America are thinking about quitting ministry altogether. We were at a recent conference and we did an informal poll of Christian therapists, and we asked them, what's the number one reason that a pastor leaves ministry? Can you guess what it was?
Well, it was burnout.
Yeah.
And, being a pastor is hard enough. It's a difficult job. But if you've been a pastor in the last few years through COVID and the pandemic, then odds are, to some degree, you are probably struggling with burnout in your own heart being in ministry.
Yeah. Today's podcast episode, we talked to Jonathan Malm, co-writer of a book, Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright. And he's looking at where are the areas that we can burn out? What are the things that are going to contribute? Are you burned out or are you just depressed? Is there a difference? And then what do we do with that so that we don't burn out and we actually burn bright? So if you are at that place where you're just, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. This is hard. If you find yourself waking up in the morning and you're not as driven, you're not as bubbly as you once were, you might have needed a better night of sleep, but you also might be teetering the edge of burnout. Sit back, listen, and take this episode in with Jonathan Malm. Hey, welcome to the Life After Ministry podcast. My name is Matt Davis, and I'm here with my lovely wife, Marilee.
Hello.
There we go. And we're here with a wonderful guy named Jonathan Malm. Jonathan, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Where you?
That was loud.
No,
Sorry.
it's good. We like loud. We're just talking about how you're an extrovert too, so you got to just jump in there and be yourself. Where in the world are you right now in this very moment?
I am in the guest bedroom of my house, but I live in San Antonio, Texas. I've lived here for, I think, 13 years now. Not 13 years. That's not right. I've been married 13 years. I've lived here for maybe 10 years. I have a toddler, and he's so much fun. And he's at daycare right now, but I have a wife, and just love my life here.
Now, you wrote a book called Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright. And we had somebody on our social media that reached out to us privately and said, I just read this book. You have to meet this guy. You have to have him on your podcast. And then I reached out to you, and lo and behold, you answered. We had a conversation, and it was great. And I said, you know what? What's interesting is somebody reached out to us and let us know about you when we were at the American Association of Christian Counselors. And while we were there, we took a poll, and we asked Christian counselors, what is the number one reason that pastors come out of ministry? And the number one answer, 82%, was burnout. Burnout. How does burnout enter into the life of somebody in ministry?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that's frustrating is I post a lot on Instagram. I post silly videos, but some of them have a little bit of heart and a little bit of depth. And thanks, yeah. Well, in the lead up to this book, I was posting a lot of videos about burnout, and I kept getting these comments saying that either burnout doesn't exist, or the only reason people burn out is because they're not, fully in love with Jesus, and they're not really engaging with their relationship with him, or that they're not called into ministry. And if you're acting within your calling, you'll never burn out. And that, unfortunately, is such a prevalent myth in the church nowadays. We think that surely God wouldn't put us in a situation where we could burn out. And there's truth to that. Like, there's truth to God caring about our souls and God putting us in places that he can give us peace in the middle of it. But the problem is we work with imperfect people. We're not only working for God, we're working for people, and people, processes, just the nature of our own hearts. It can lead to burnout pretty easily if we're not careful, if we don't look for the warning signs, if we don't put things in proper places in our lives and in our ministry.
How do
it can
we
definitely lead to burnout.
Avoid that? I mean, obviously that's the number one question, but maybe some of the early indicating signs of is there a scan I can do of my life, my body, my surroundings to know this is an early warning light that I should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So in the book, we talk about some things like, becoming more short with your family or your spouse, no longer caring about people, which you get into ministry because you care for people. But when you find you just can't muster up the energy to care about what they're going through, or you're even hating people, that's an indication. Another thing is it's this idea of no longer being brilliant at the basics, the things that, man, you're a rock star at these things normally, and now you're just struggling to do the things that used to be easy for you. No longer wanting to try new things, which is frequently an issue people deal with when they're dealing with burnout. But there are a few things that we just need to be aware that, like, we're heading down a path. I think of burnout a lot. This is not a psychological comparison. So, I mean, not from a counselor. A counselor would probably maybe not say this because it's not scientifically proven. But I think of depression. I can be depressed. I'm depressed. I'll go for a walk. I'll eat a meal. I'll, do a few simple things to get out of that depression. But if I am going through depression, a clinical, cyclical thing, taking a walk, eating a meal, these simple things that can get us out of a simple depression don't work whenever you're dealing with depression. I'd say the same is true for burnout. You can feel burnt out. You can be situationally burnt out and you need to rest. You need to recover. But if you're dealing with a cycle of burnout, it's not as simple as just, taking a nap or taking 2 days off. Like it's something that you can find yourself really getting into a cycle of. And unfortunately, the road that took you there was a long road. So the road to get out of that is a long road too. So hopefully you can be aware before you get into that cycle and put things in order to avoid getting there.
What do you see are some of the dynamics at play in the modern day church that's contributing towards burnout in pastors? Because, I mean, it's a huge prevalent problem. So are there some common denominators in churches or ministries that you see?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things we talk about in the book, so there's sort of 10 pillars of health that we talk about in the book. And certain ones tend to be weaknesses for certain people. But what's really common right now is boundaries, an issue of boundaries. And that's something I hear a lot about, is that people feel like they can't set boundaries. And the problem is you have Jesus talking in scripture, you have him telling the story of the Good Samaritan, help your neighbor, like help anyone who needs help, right? Like that's constantly in the New Testament, the idea of, even in the Old Testament, of just, if someone needs your help them. And that worked in a society where you were surrounded by 200 people at most. Someone that was physically in your presence needed help and you would help them. Unfortunately, now we have 5,000 to 10,000 people with constant access to us through email, through social media, through phone calls, through text messages. And the burden of what people are asking for from us is so much greater than it was. Yes, we still need to be sacrificial with our giving, with our love, with our generosity, but we also need to learn how to set loving boundaries, not to keep people out, but to instead create a gate that lets people come in at the appropriate times and through the appropriate ways so that we can help them. So that's one of the things that I think is really hard is, maybe I work in a church and I'm a graphic designer. I'm, not necessarily a pastoral role, but I'm supporting the role of what pastor does. And pastor needs a graphic on Saturday, which would normally be my day off before Sunday. And of course, pastor's busy during the week. It's not like he's just being lazy and not thinking about this, but he's like, oh no, suddenly I need this graphic. And now because of that lack of preparation or because of that inability to prepare, I'm having to work on my day off. And we can get into cycles like this where we get an email at 7 p.m. or we get a text message on Saturday or on Sunday morning right before service that creates these emergencies and creates these inabilities to set boundaries that can help create healthy rhythms for us.
So
that's one I think is probably the most common, I think, nowadays in churches.
That makes sense.
What prompted you and your co-author to write a book? Like, did you burn out, or did you just see it so much that you just said, like, we got to do something about this?
Yeah, I consider myself a success case. We talked about this before we jumped on the podcast. I was a missionary kid. Also a pastor's kid. I worked on staff at a church, at a growing church that was growing from, I think when I came on staff, it was 100 people. When I left staff, it was around 800 people. We were getting into a building. It was, kind of the mega church movement of like, let's grow fast, let's go fast. And I survived and I didn't burn out. And I don't know if I just got out at the right time or if I was I do think that I had some of these things intentionally in place, but from the book, that's what I'm gesturing to off screen. Sorry. But yeah, so I did survive. And then my co-writer, Jason, he survived as well. But we've seen so many of our friends in ministry, especially during COVID. COVID was really the thing that we saw so many friends, maybe they weathered the year of, restrictions and everyone in their congregation being mad no matter what decision they made. We saw so many people maybe get through that year, but then burn out at the end of it. They survived, but then they lost all their passion and I can't maintain ministry after that. So we saw so many friends going through that, and we wanted to address it. My co-writer, his wife is a clinical counselor. He does a lot of consulting and speaking a lot of places. I do a lot of consulting and speaking a lot of places. So we saw this issue that was becoming so prevalent, and it had always been an issue, but a spotlight was put on it during COVID, and we wanted to address it. And not just to, we didn't want to write another book. There's some great books about how to get out of burnout. Mostly you probably need to see a counselor because there's a lot of things that need to be rewired and unpacked. But we wanted to hopefully get on the front end of that and say, burnout isn't inevitable. You don't have to wait for the car to break down to fix it. You can actually tune it up and change the oil and tweak things before things become a problem and keep it running strong.
So I talked to somebody yesterday who has been in ministry for 26 years, co-founded a church, and we were having a conversation because he's at the end. He said, I need to be done. What we're looking at in the world of pastoral transitions and life after ministry is people who are at that spot. And, I realized, because I was in ministry, that I could burn myself out and I could go too fast. And now that I'm not in ministry, it's the same problem. I used to blame it on the church, but I'm the problem, I think, most of the time. But how do you actually, for some people, they might need to get out of ministry and to reset a lot of things. But to that person who's in it right now, who's on the edge and just my morning pastor, I need to get out of this. What do you say to them to just give them some hope, or here's what you should be thinking about next?
There's this thing that happens when we feel trapped. And that's, I think, so often what we feel. I was talking to a pastor friend the other day, and he is a pastor of a small church. They're kind of independent. They're in this downtown cool area of town. He's this motorcycle guy. He loves motorcycles. Anyways, very cool guy. He has this really cool beard. And he was talking about how he was about to just give up. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be in ministry anymore. I feel trapped. I feel like I have to do this certain thing. And he was talking to this well-known pastor, and the pastor said, what would you do if you didn't have to what would you do if you didn't have to do the things you think you have to do? In other words, you don't have to be a full-time pastor. You don't have to do all the things that you're supposed to do as a young church or as a church plant. And he rewired what he did in ministry. He is now bivocational, where he's previously just a full-time pastor. Now he runs a motorcycle shop, and he does pastoring as well. And it was interesting to see that he realized, I'm not trapped here. I don't have to do things a certain way. I don't have to be a full-time pastor. I don't have to run my church a certain way. And I think also along those lines, and it was just really cool to see that, but along those lines, I think a lot of people feel a calling to ministry, and they think that must mean I need to work at a church. We're all called to ministry. And I can minister working at a church. I can minister running my businesses that help churches. I can minister. My pastor always talks about how he worked in a restaurant, and he was a pastor for these employees that he managed when he was working at a restaurant. We can be pastors in many different capacities. So the idea that you're not trapped in ministry sometimes is enough to free you up to say, okay, I don't have to be here if I don't want to be. Do I want to be here? Do I feel like God is calling me to this particular place? Yes, he's called me to be a pastor, but it doesn't necessarily mean I need to be right here. So sometimes that means, I don't like working for a church, and that's okay. Or sometimes it means, maybe I just need to try things a little differently and not do the things that everyone expects me that I should be doing, but instead do them the way that I feel like God's calling me to do them.
I think that's such a good perspective, because I think I'm sure that there are probably people even listening to this right now who feel like they're on the precipice of leaving ministry because they're feeling burnt out. But it's almost like there's this other element of discernment that's needed is God really calling me out of vocational ministry, or is this a call to stop and assess the way that I'm doing ministry and maybe pivot and extend that ministry that you're currently doing in a different direction versus, a complete 360 turn somewhere else?
Yeah, I just hear it so often that people say, I feel like I'm burnt out, but I can't leave my job. And I'm like, why couldn't you, like, why can't you leave your job? Like, we get into this trapped mindset and we can't see beyond it. And that's so often what happens with anxiety, with depression, with all of these things, is we get so laser focused in this small world. And sometimes it just helps if you have someone on the outside say, well, and that's the value of counseling, frankly. Is it really that way? Like, are you really trapped there? Can you not leave the church? Can you not work somewhere else? And it's so helpful to just break through that kind of mental block.
I think fear keeps us there, right? And there's a video, and I used to actually take my staff through this every year just as a heart check of where we're at. But it's called Caged, Comfortable, or Charged. And talking about, sometimes in ministry, if you've been there a long time, you're just kind of comfortable. You're floating, and charge is like gung ho, ready to go. But we find a lot of people who are at that point of that precipice of burning out, or they just kind of given up. They're caged. And when you're caged, either you've put those walls up yourself, or somebody else, you've allowed them to put them up around you. And the only way that you're going to get out of that cage is you're waiting for some force to come in and knock it down, or you're going to have to open the door and get out yourself. And I think that trapped feeling really keeps us from, we have no options, and this is an impossible situation I can't get out of.
Yeah, it's funny because we feel trapped and we feel stuck, and I can't leave ministry. I can't leave ministry. I can't leave ministry. And then either we have a moral failure where we're blown up and we're violently forced out of it, or we just burn out and we lose our faith and then we leave the ministry. Like, regardless, you can leave the ministry, but are you going to leave it in a healthy way, or are you going to leave it forcefully and violently? Because it's going to happen one way or another if we don't take steps to be healthy on the way out. I would much rather, I think there's a lot of cultural value placed on going out in a blaze of glory. Like, oh, I'm going to just like blow up everything. And I don't think that's necessarily what is taught in scripture so much. A lot of it is just make it a point to live a quiet life, to love others, let's take the easier path out.
As a son of missionaries and pastors who are no longer missionaries and pastors, what was their transition like coming out of those ministry seasons for you as a kid watching that all go down?
Yeah. So my parents are technically, I guess, still missionaries, because the cool thing about the missions agency they run is it's all self-funded. Like everyone except for, I think, the accountant raises their own money to work on staff at this missions organization. So it's really interesting. I've seen, it's been kind of seamless transitions. I feel like my dad is always called in to be sort of a peacemaker and a different perspective in the situation. I've seen him brought into a church that was the church where I started working. When we got there, it was 75 people. They had previously, before the massive church split, purchased a large piece of property to build on. So they were $1 million into debt. The current property was way too big for 75 people and was running down because nobody took care of it, because they were planning on getting to the next building. There was a lawsuit pending. It was just a lot of chaos. And that's where my dad was invited to say, hey, would you pastor this church? And he brought me and my mom to Corpus Christi, Texas, and we just got in it, right? And it was interesting because my dad, he was very good about not feeling trapped. And he never made us feel trapped. So he said, I'm going to pastor here, but I'm also going to still run this missions agency that he was running. If my wife doesn't want to come to church here, she doesn't have to. My son doesn't need to be. I think my first summer there, I was in youth, and I went to youth camp with the youth. And I think my dad wasn't even the pastor yet. And some kids in the camp, in the dorm, were like dyeing their hair blue. And I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I'm like, is it temporary? They're like, yeah, it washed out after like 2 washes. So I did it. And then it didn't wash out after 2 washes. So I come home from camp with blue hair, And my dad, who wasn't yet, voted in as pastor, he could have been so embarrassed by me, like, oh, my rebellious son, but he wasn't trapped and he didn't feel like he had to prove anything. He's like, I don't need this. So he was like, oh, that's funny. Like, your hair's blue. That's oops, dumb mistake, but whatever. He didn't get mad at me. He didn't like my mom either. Like, neither of them got mad at me. And it was just so interesting to see that dynamic, because I've seen so many pastors get embarrassed by their kids, or, their kids do something that kind of puts a mark on them. And my dad never felt trapped like that. And it was really cool to see that. I feel like my dad in ministry, it was never his identity. He's like, okay, God, if you're calling me, I'll do it, but I'm not going to try to hold on to it very, very hard. Like, he was always really holding everything God gave him very lightly. And it's just been interesting to see in those transitions. It was never something was wrestled away from him. He was always glad to give it up.
It makes me think of, I heard a lady talk about when you go to like the grocery store and your toddler is like, I want that and I want this, and they're all over the place, and then you don't give it to them, and then they throw a fit. You are the father of a toddler, so
I'm a toddler owner. Yeah,
take a note on it, because we've been there too. Like, we even have a video of our daughter like, I want that one, and just screaming in the store.
It's one of my favorite Instagram posts.
Yeah, but but the parents often leave in shame because their kid is having a bad day. And I remember this lady just saying, well, that's not my issue. They would walk around as there's kids still throwing, they're like, looks like somebody's having a bad day, and then just kind of keep going through. And there's a resilience to that. But I think that we need a resilience. What do you do though? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like hearing your story, it sounds like the opposite, honestly, of stories I've heard, especially of missionary families, where it seems like the well-being of the family, of the child, was sacrificed for the good of the ministry. And I think we see, years down the road, the harm that causes to the next generation of people coming up. But it's like your dad has been able to find security and balance. I don't know. Is that what, I mean, here you are, a missionary kid, and you still love the church. You still love people. You have a passionate heart for the church. And it seems like it's so much these days not that. And so is there anything else you can specifically point to that your family did to impart? That's the word. Yeah. Yeah. Not impose. That's
impose.
Not right. But
yeah. I mean, I think about this a lot because I have friends who are pastors, and seeing their kids navigating this stuff. I do think there's a grace that all of my siblings, I have 2 other siblings. They're missionary kids, pastors' kids. My experience as a pastor kid, they had an even worse experience as pastor kids. I don't really remember that season of our life. But before we went to Guatemala, it was, a church plant in rural Texas, and it was a much messier situation. And they still love Jesus and still love the church, which is really cool. So 3 for 3, that's pretty great. That's pretty great batting average for my parents. But I think, some key things they did were they were not different people on stage than they were at home. And that was really interesting to me. I never felt like my dad was putting on an act ever. He's like, it's funny. My wife says that like, there's Billy Graham and then Rick Malm, my dad, like he's like above Billy Graham. Like he's like the saint in her mind, but he was very humble. Also, I remember a few times, we had talks with him that he does this thing when he gets angry, that he like scratches his head and you can see this look in his eyes. And he took us out to dinner, all of the kids, and said, okay, can you tell me what I do? Like he humbled himself enough to hear us out and try to work on that, which was really interesting. He never was afraid, and he's still alive, so he's still this way. He's never afraid of looking like a fool or being disrespected, or like his respect was always earned. Like I respect him so much to this day because I feel like he earned it. And it's interesting. There's this counterintuitive thing that happens when you're humble. When you admit your mistakes, you actually get more respect, which is such a counterintuitive thing. But it's so true. So showing humility, willing to not be perceived as perfect, is actually one of the best things you can do as a leader, both as a father and as a pastor. So I think I would put it down to those things. But there's also a grace element where I've seen kids whose parents, I believe, did the exact same thing, and they just went wacky. And it just, it's like, there's a lot of shame that you can be put on, like, oh, I must have failed as a father if my kids are no longer serving God. So I don't want to add like a shame element there, because you feel like I did all that stuff and I still lost my kids to, the church or to God. So there's definitely a grace element, that it's kind of a luck thing, I think, for sure.
Yeah. If you can look at your kids, great parents are able to be authentic and vulnerable at the same time, age appropriately, but to be able to look at your kid struggles with anger and has a temper tantrum, to be able to say, I can see that you're angry right now, and let me show you how I've worked through that own anger. That you get
that from me.
Yeah, you get that from me. It's one of the things I wish I didn't hand down, but you've probably seen me do it, and that's probably why you do it. And let me show you what Daddy has done, right? And if we can do that, and as that conversation progresses and our kids are older, and it's like, I know that you're stuck on drugs. I know that you're looking at pornography. Let me show you where I've had those battles in my life, and I've also seen victory for it. In terms of the book, if we haven't mentioned the name, it's Don't Burn Out, Burn Bright. And what I love about fire is, fire, it can burn things down. It can burn a house down, and it can destroy, but a fire also is good. It can bring warmth, and it can light the way and purifies. But as we're kind of just bringing the conversation here to a close, what does it look like, and how do we burn bright and destroy and burn out?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to just, and this is something, again, I think my dad did really well, is keeping an eternal perspective. Every question that we had, whenever I was a teenager and I wanted to go to a party, my dad would ask me this question. He said, do you think that will be good for you? And it was a matter of, what is the future going to look like? Is this going to lead to a future that you want, or is this going to lead to a future that you don't want? And I'd say the same thing for ministry. Are my decisions right now going to lead to a team that I want in 2 years? Am I maybe manipulating people to get what I want right now, but it's actually going to hurt the ministry 5 years from now because they're going to burn out? Am I looking good right now at the expense of my future? Am I hiding something right now because it's easy, but it's going to burn me further down the road? I think that's so important. And we talk about it. There's a chapter in there about leading from a place of values. And it's really a matter of, what do I want 5 years, 10 years from now to look like? Not like, what's your 10-year plan? Like, I'm not talking about achievement. I'm talking about, do you want your church to be a place of peace and of healing and of a team that loves each other and gets along? And what are you doing right now to foster that? And those things that you do to foster a healthy environment as a team or as a church are also going to help you have a place of healing and of wholeness, because you're going to get to reap the benefits of that. So it's not actually in the book, except for the chapter on values, but I think that's all kind of what it comes down to, is, are these decisions I'm making now going to lead to the future that I want?
I love it. Well, I would suggest anybody who's listening right now to grab the book. I listened to it on Audible at 1.2 speed. It was perfect for me.
Ooh, nice.
1.2. That's my speed.
I got 1.25. That's like the max I can do for Audible.
Yeah. But Jonathan, if we want to grab the book, where are all the places we can get it, and how can we follow you and the good things you're doing for the kingdom?
Yeah. So don'tburnoutburnbright.com has all the links to where you can buy the book, but it also has a free health assessment. So those 10 pillars we talked about in the book, it really, based on it's an anonymous survey. You fill it out, and it kind of tells you what area you might be most prone to burning out in, and then gives you a next step based on that. So definitely check out that free assessment, but then it has the links there, and it has a leader's guide for the book and a self-reflection guide. So a lot of cool resources there. Then if you want to follow me, if you're willing to see silly videos about what mostly American church culture looks like, American modern church culture looks like, follow me on Instagram at Jonathan Malm. I post a lot of videos and a lot of memes there, but also some good content too, some serious content as well.
I'm thankful that the algorithm has chosen you show up a lot right now in my feed. And so I do laugh. I think it's a fantastic.
We have to be able to laugh at ourselves a little bit, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
There's the destructive joking about it or the like, this is how we are, and it's kind of like out of a place of love. I hope it comes across that it's from a place of love.
Absolutely, it does. Jonathan, thanks for the book. Thanks for this time together, and we're thankful for your ministry.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life After Ministry podcast. If you are navigating a ministry transition, or you're in a ministry leadership role and you see a change on the horizon, the worst thing you could do is do this alone. We have 2 Facebook groups that are designed just for you. One is called Life After Ministry, and it's a group that offers community and support for those who are in transition. The other one is called the Elder Hub, and it's a resource center for ministry leaders. These communities are designed to give you insight, advice, and answers for your questions. We also have pastoraltransitions.com, and there you'll find articles on everything from messaging transition from the pulpit to what does it actually look like to become a community known by our love in every season. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast. Your support helps us extend our reach and communicate this message. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Shalom.